Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another edition of the Underhive Wars. This is battle report number 3 of our Dominion campaign for our gang's fight for Sector 7, and in this battle report my friends Brother Grimm and Sister Serial are fighting it out on this one. Brother Grimm is bringing the Pelago Slan Kings of House Goliath, while Sister Serial is bringing Precinct 13 of the Adeptus Arbities Enforcers. Well, in this case they're actually a Venator gang, but we're just calling them Enforcers because my friend Sister Serial likes playing that gang. So this is going to be a standout scenario, so it's a good old-fashioned gang fight. So we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what each of the gangs is bringing, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So with that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so as you can see here, my friends are playing a standoff scenario. We're playing in the tombs. My friends wanted to play in that one for a while now, so they get to do that. The objective for the standoff scenario is to score the most points. You get 3 points for leaders, 2 points for champions, as well as 1 point for everyone else. So long as you put those kind of fighters out of action, you get the most points. Whoever has the most points by the end of the scenario are the winners. For the rewards on this one, you get d6 times creds for the winners, as well as d6 times 5 creds for the loser. And when it comes to the reputation, the winner earns 2 reputation points. Both gangs gain +1 reputation point for fighting for each other for the very first time. So the Pelago Slam Kings will get 1 point, as well as Precinct 13. However, if any of the gangs bottle out, they lose 1 reputation point from that as well. And then of course, standard experience points rules apply. Everyone gets +1 for surviving the scenario. Leader gets +1 as well, and also +1 if you manage to take a fighter out of action. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go talk about the battle plan real quick. So here's the overhead shot of the tombs for both my friends. My friend Brother Grimm, he's deployed his Pelago Slan Kings on the near side of the table, while my other friend Sister Serial has deployed on the far side of the table. And pretty much from what I'm understanding is they're just both going to try to kill each other as best they can. We are fighting in the tombs, so it is a close assault and a close quarters combat type of terrain, so there isn't really much tactics kind of involved. My friend Brother Grimm does have the upper hand in this because he has higher toughness than Sister Serial's characters do, and Goliaths are meant for close combat, so I mean he does have an edge on this part. However, Sister Serial has more armor and better equipment for her Venators. So we'll see exactly how it kind of works out. So with the battle plan over with, let's go ahead and talk about deployment real quick. Alright, so starting with the Pelago Slan Kings on the left hand side, you have up front is Trip the Shrimp, that is a Juve. Right behind him is Rager, who is a ganger armed with a shotgun, and behind them is Flesh Stick, which is a ganger armed with a renderizer. Over the right hand side, I believe that is Porter is the name of the guy's name. He's armed with a bolt gun, and right behind him is Grizz, which is the gang champion who's armed with a heavy stubber. And making up Brother Grimm's right-hand side is his last 3-man fire team. Up in front is Whack-A-Mole, who's a Juve who's armed with a hammer as well as an auto pistol. Behind him is Gage, who is a ganger armed with a stub cannon. And behind them is Blitzkrieg Bob. There we go. That's his gang leader who's armed with a grenade launcher with crack and frag grenades. He also has a sword. And that pretty much makes up the deployment for the Pelago Slan Kings on this one. Meanwhile, across the table is Sister Serial's Precinct 13. On the left-hand side, that is Judge Mason. I believe he has mesh armor as well as a shotgun. Behind him is Judge Darko, I believe is the guy's name. That guy is just armed with a bolt gun, I believe. And then right behind him is his Sister Serial's leader, which is Judge Fear. He's a sergeant. He has a bolt gun as well as mesh armor. And that pretty much makes up Sister Serial's left-hand flank. And finally on the right hand side is Sister Serial's right hand kill team. On the back there is Judge Drake. That is a enforcer who's armed with a heavy stubber. Up in front is Judge Gosling. That guy has a high straw pattern energy shield, I believe. He's also got a pistol, I believe, he also carries on that one. And right next to him is the Interceptor, which is the Cyber Mystique. And that pretty much makes up Sister Serial's right-hand deployment. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and my friends roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so starting off with turn number 1, the Goliaths managed to take the initiative on this one. So my buddy Brother Grimm decides to activate Blitzkrieg Bob first, and since he's a gang leader, he can activate all fighters within 3 inches of him, up to 2. So in this case, the first thing he does, he sends up Whack-A-Mole, his double up movement, so that way he occupies the far side of the intersection, so that way if any enforcers come down that causeway, they have to go through Whack-A-Mole first. Right behind him, he also spends double movements for both Gage as well as for Blitzkrieg Bob. They move into positions on the left and right hand side of the intersection so that they can supply covering fire. Pretty much the Goliaths at this point are using the Juvie up in the front as kind of like bait, as well as a human shield, so that way none of his more valuable fighters get hit. Sister Serial then activates the Interceptor, and she moves him double up his movement, so that way he's right kind of inside that right hand side chamber at the entrance there, so that way he's not directly in the line of fire of any gangers from the Goliaths opening up on him, but at the same time he could also quickly charge in if he needs to attack Whack-A-Mole or any of the Goliaths that manage to go past him towards the other side of the table. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side of the tombs, Brother Grimm then activates Trip the Shrimp, has him spend a double movement to move directly up the main causeway on the left-hand side, so that way he can start engaging into any enforcers coming on that way. Also to use the Juvie as a human shield, because my buddy Brother Grimm does that quite a bit with his Juvies. Sister Serial then also activates both Drake, who's her gang champion, and it also in turns also activates Judge Gosling as well. And both those characters also make up a double movement forward as well. And Judge Gosling takes the points because he does have the high strike energy shield, so because that he does get +2 save in case if he gets engaged in close combat. And at the same time, he also gets +1 to his save if he gets shot at from the front. So it kind of provides kind of like a cover bonus for both of those Venators moving forward. So it's actually kind of a good idea. And at the same time, Judge Drake could also cover up position behind him, so that way they can provide some covering fire if he needs to. Meanwhile, my friend Brother Grimm then activates Grizz, who's his gang champion, armed with a heavy stubber. They basically puts them both forward with their double movements. Grizz starts moving to the left-hand side of the intersection to support Trip the Shrimp, at the same time moving up Porter to the right-hand side to lend some support to Gage. So that way he has enough fighters spread out to tackle both main axes of advance towards his battle lines. Meanwhile, Sister Serial then activates her gang leader, Judge Fear, who then also activates Judge Mason as well as Judge Darko. First of all, she actually hasn't spent a double movement as well, so spreading out her forces along her battle lines. Judge Darko moves over to the right hand side to lend some support to Judge Drake as well as Judge Gosling. Judge Mason on the other side goes to the left hand side to intercept Trip the Shrimp, and then Judge Fear stands right in the middle between the two of them, so that way if he needs to, Sister Serial can activate that character, and then she can have her fighters been activated by their leader. And that pretty much makes up all the activations for my friend Sister Serial. So because of the rest of the turns goes to my friend Brother Grimm. And for the rest of the turn, Brother Grimm moves up Rager as well as Flesh Stick, so that way they can lend some support to Trip the Shrimp as well. And since nobody's shot, there is no shooting phase, and since nobody's engaged in close combat, there's no close combat. At the same time, since nobody's injured or any bottle rolls need to be made, there is no end phase as well. And that pretty much rounds it up for turn number 1. Here is a overhead shot of the entire battlefield, so that way you guys get an idea of what's going on for turn number 1, so that way you can see exactly what's happening. As you can see from this overhead shot, both the Precinct 13 as well as the Pelago Slime Kings are moving towards each other. As you can see, they're kind of going through those main center axis points on the right and left hand side, trying to get to each other. As you can see, the Juvies from the Goliaths are moving up front, getting ready to take the brunt of the advance, while Sister Serial is positioning her troops in such a way to fight a little bit more defensively. So with the end of turn number 1, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and both my friends roll for initiative to see who goes first. And the first thing that happens is that my friend Brother Grimm manages to take the initiative on this part. So then he activates his gang leader Blitzkrieg Bob, who then in turn activates fighters within 3 inches of him. He is within 3 inches of Whack-A-Mole, so because of that, Whack-A-Mole spends a turn charging across the battlefield, turning around that corner and engaging the Interceptor into close combat. Close combat was less than spectacular between these two fighters. In the end, my friend Sister Serial is able to put a flesh wound onto Whack-A-Mole, so he's a little bit easier to wound now, and my friend Brother Grimm lost his very first combat. So even regardless of look at it, none of them are out of action, none of them are serious injured, so because of that, they're both engaged in close combat and will be doing so for the rest of the turn. Quickly pressing his advance, Brother Grimm then activates his other two fighters, Brother Blitzkrieg Bob as well as Gage. He moves them both up their normal movement allowance, so that way they can also shoot during this turn. First of all, he opens up with Gage with his stib cannon against Judge Gosling, who's got the high straw energy shield, as well as Blitzkrieg Bob, who's armed with a grenade launcher, firing a crack grenade at him. Gage's shot actually does hit, as well as does hit Judge Gosling, however doesn't wound him, however, so because of that he does get pushed back an inch. However, when it comes to Blitzkrieg Bob's crack grenade, not only does he manage to hit him, he also manages to wound him as well. He causes 2 damage, so because of that, 2 injury rolls are made for Judge Gosling. He inflicts a flesh wound onto Judge Gosling, as well as an out of action roll. So right off the bat, Sister Sarah has lost 1 member of her Venators gang off the bat, and my friend Brother Grimm has claimed first blood for the scenario, so they'll need to roll off to see if anybody bottles out at the end of the turn. Not to be outdone, Sister Sarah then activates Judge Drake, who then cuts loose with his heavy stubber. Unfortunately for him, though, he wasn't able to cause any wounds onto either what's his name, Blitzkrieg Bob, or onto Porter, as well as Gage. All of his shots basically missed. And to make matters worse, he rolled up an ammo check on that part, so Sister Sarah will have to spend a turn clearing out the jam that's gone on Judge Drake's heavy stubber. Combat between Whack-A-Mole as well as onto the Interceptor is not as great as it was hoped. Once again, my friend Brother Grimm managed to take out the Interceptor. Actually managed to hit him twice, as well as wound him twice as well. The first one actually caused the flesh wound, while the second one actually puts the Interceptor out of action. So because of that, Judge Gosling as well as the Interceptor will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to them at the end of the scenario. Smelling blood in the water, my friend Brother Grimm then activates Trip the Shrimp and actually has him charge him directly into Judge Mason. So because of that, Judge Mason as well as Trip the Shrimp will need to fight it out in the combat phase. Unfortunately for Brother Grimm, though, combat did not go exactly as planned. Trip the Shrimp just kind of failed his rolls, which makes sense because he is a juvie, and he's also fighting against a fully fleshed out enforcer. Judge Mason does manage to put Trip the Shrimp out of action with his injuries that he put on him as well, so because of that, Sister Sarah has chalked up one injury already against the Pelago Slam Kings, and Trip the Shrimp will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to him at the end of the scenario as well. Not to be outdone by Brother Grimm, Sister Sarah then activates Judge Fear, who then in turn also activates Judge Darko and Judge Mason. On the left-hand side, Mason and Fear move up to the left-hand alcove, so that way they get good lines of shot against the Goliaths that are coming their way. They both open up on Rager, who is the closest gang member towards them, but unfortunately they're unable to wound him. I believe it was Judge Mason, I think he just completely missed, and Judge Fear, if I remember correctly, did manage to hit Rager, but was unable to wound him. So because of that, Rager is pinned, so he'll need to spend one of his parts of his actions for the next phase to get back on his feet again, so that way he can start either fighting or shooting during the later on in the turn. Meanwhile, Judge Darko, who was the third gang member that was activated, who was the second gang member activated by Judge Fear, he moves over his normal wound allowance to the right-hand side, right behind Judge Drake, and he opens up with his bolt gun directly onto Gage as well. Unfortunately for Sister Sarah, she did manage to hit Gage, but she wasn't able to wound him. When it came to the wound roll, she rolled like a 1, so because that didn't really cause him any damage. Now, Gage is pinned because he did get hit, but all he has to do is spend one of his actions to get back on his feet again, and he can shoot or move or whatever still be kind of daily as well. So things are not looking very good for Sister Sarah up to this point. Sister Sarah then activates Grizz, who she moves over to the left-hand side, his normal moon allowance, and actually asks him open up and fire with his heavy bolter. And because he's also gang champion, he can also activate another fire within 3 inches of him, so because of that, Flesh Stick is also activated as well. Brother Grimm opens up with that heavy stubber. Not only does he manage to hit Judge Mason, not only does he manage to hit him, but he also manages to put that guy out of action as well. So because of that, Judge Mason will need. Not managed to put him out of action. He just seriously injured him. I'm sorry. So Judge Mason is hit. He's also seriously injured, so he's on the ground, out for the count. He'll have to roll up on the end phase to see exactly what happens to him. He also managed to put a wound onto Judge Fear as well. I think my friend Brother Grimm managed to roll 3 hits with the rapid fire die, so that's the reason why he was able to shoot both those guys like he did. At the same time, Porter also moves up right behind Blitzkrieg Bob, so that way he can provide some cover to his leader at the same time. And I believe he also has that guy cut loose with his bolt gun as well, right over Blitzkrieg Bob's shoulder. And not only does he manage to hit Judge Drake, he also managed to cause a serious injury under Judge Drake as well, putting him down as well as giving him a flesh wound as well. So because of that, Judge Drake will need to roll off on the injury recovery table to see what happens to him in the end phase. Judge Darko does manage to pass his cool check, so because of that, he does not run, he just stands his ground because, enforcers don't break. And finally, my buddy Brother Grimm then activates Flesh Stick, who then charges directly forward towards Judge Fear. So because the two of them are engaged in close combat, and to make matters worse, he also took a slug stem pack, which basically gives him +1 to his +2 to his movement, +2 to his strength, as well as +2 to his toughness for the remainder of the turn. So because of that, this guy is roided out, carrying a huge renderizing axe, just heading straight towards Judge Fear and engaging that guy in close combat. In the end, when it actually hit him, he actually rolled 2 on the serious injury table, seriously injured rolls when it came to injuries that he landed on Judge Fear. So Judge Fear is still there, and he will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to him as well at the end phase. The reason why is because one of them actually came up as a flesh wound, but because the renderizer has the pulverize rule, any flesh wounds become a serious injury if you roll a d6 and roll high enough, in which case Brother Grimm actually managed to pull that off and managed to put the wounds on him. So with the action phase over with, we go directly to the end phase. And the first thing my friends have to do is roll off for bottle tests. Brother Grimm managed to pass his no problem. However, Sister Serial, she failed her bottle test. So because at the beginning of the next turn, she'll need to roll off for each of her gang members to see if they stay or not. They have to take a cold check to see if they run away or not. And because of that, Sister Serial does lose her 1 reputation point for fighting against the Pelago Slam Kings for the very first time. As for the recovery rolls, for Judge Drake, he does not recover. He is still seriously injured. Same thing with, I believe, Judge Mason is also still seriously injured. And I also believe that Judge Fear is also seriously injured as well. So because of that, they're still laying on the ground, just kind of bleeding out at this point. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of turn number 2. As you can see, the only 2 people that my friend Brother Grimm actually has are Rager as well as Gage. And they're actually not down, they're just injured at this point. So because of that, they're getting back on their feet later on. At the same time, Judge Mason, he does get he gets an out of action roll for him. So because of that, Judge Mason will need to go out of action. And Judge Fear manages to pass his injury tests and get flesh wounds. So because of that, Judge Fear is back on his feet again as well. And of course, I talked about Judge Drake, how he's still out of action. So things are not doing very well for him as well. So with that takes directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Enforcers, and the Enforcers get to go first. So Sister Serial then activates Judge Fear to fight against the renderizing carrying Flesh Stick. Unfortunately for Sister Serial, though, she managed not to cause a single wound onto Flesh Stick because Flesh Stick has +2 to his toughness. I believe he's toughness 6, so he's really hard to kill in this combat. So because none of the wounds actually hit him. However, Flesh Stick had no problem wounding Judge Fear, managed to put him down as well, causing him serious injury as well as another flesh wound. So because of that, he's laying down, and so when Sister Serial can activate Flesh Stick later on, she'll be able to finish him off with a coup de grace. Up next, Sister Serial then activates Gage, who gets back on his feet, so that way he can start shooting back to Judge Darko. I believe his shot misses, so he was able to cause any wounds onto that judge. And because Blitzkrieg Bob was also activated as well during that turn, she also moves up Blitzkrieg Bob to move up a little bit and have him fire with his grenade launcher with a crack grenade again. But unfortunately for Brother Grimm, he missed that shot, so because of that, nothing really much happens there. And then, of course, the third person to be activated is Whack-A-Mole. And as you can see in this photo, Whack-A-Mole does spend the additional action to put the coup de grace onto the Interceptor. So because of that, the Interceptor does go out of action, and it'll need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to it. And then Brother Grimm also spends the action point in order to take out Judge Fear and putting the coup de grace on that character as well, putting him directly out of action. And Judge Fear will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to him. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of the game, because at this point, my friend Sister Serial just kind of calls the game because she wasn't wanting to lose any more members of her gang that she already has at this point. So because of that ends up being a victory for the Goliaths, and the Pelago Slam Kings managed to win their very first scenario. So with that being said, we're going to go directly to the after action report to the post game and talk about exactly what happened to each of the gangs. Alright, so starting off with Precinct 13. For the injuries, they had 4 injuries in their gang: Judge Fear, Judge Gosling, Judge Mason, as well as the Interceptor. Judge Fear and Gosling rolled up out cold for these injuries, so because of that, they will be able to make a full recovery and also fight in the next scenario. Judge Mason, however, earned Enfeebled, so because he loses 1 point to his toughness check, he also goes into recovery, so will not be able to fight in the next scenario. Same thing with the Interceptor, he also suffers a grievous injury as well, and he will not be able to participate in the next scenario either. As for advancements, there was no advancements at this time because not enough people had enough experience points to buy advancements, and since there are a Venator gang, they don't have territories. At the merchants, they do earn 10 credits from their reputation, from 1 point of reputation that they start off with. They also managed to get 5 credits from the scenario, and they also worked the turf and plead to the lords in order to get more credits for support, and they managed to generate 20 credits for themselves, giving a total of 35 credits, in which case Cicero then took all 35 and put that in her stash because she's saving up to buy additional things for her gang members. When it came to reputation, she did earn +1 reputation point for fighting against the Pelago Slan Kings for the very first time. However, she did bottle out, so because of that she lost that point reputation, and that keeps her at 1 reputation point for her gang. Her new record is at 0 wins as well as 1 loss, and her current gang rating is still at 1,000 points. Now, as for the Pelago Slam Kings, the only injury they had was Trip the Shrimp, who got an out cold recovery, so because of that, he's perfectly fine. For the advancements, my brother Grim decided not to advance any of his gang members this time, just kind of keeps at this point. For his territory, he earned 60 creds from his settlement, which parts are pretty cool, and at the end of the scenario, he re-rolled up to see exactly which territory he gained, and he captured a Prometheum cache. So what that means is that in every single time he fights a scenario, 3 of his gang members get 3 incendiary charges for free for each scenario they place from this point forward, and also if he has any flamers or in his army as well, he gets to reroll 1 failed ammo test from one of those if that should ever happen, to represent the fact that they have all this, incendiaries that they can use for their gang. At the merchant, he earned 20 credits from the scenario as well as 60 credits from the settlement, earning him 80 credits total. He took all 80 credits and hired a brand new ganger named the Headhunter, who he armed with a lasgun as well as an axe. When it came to his reputation, he has 1 point reputation from his settlement, 1 point of reputation from fighting against the Precinct 13 for the very first time, and because he won the standoff scenario, he also earned 2 more reputation points on top of that, netting him 6 reputation in total. His new record now is at 1 win as well as 0 losses, and his new gang rating is at 1,080 points. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. You guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on Instagram, Google+, Blogger.com, as well as Facebook for all the latest greatest news about the hobby that we're doing on this channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.